Mornings across Wyoming's wide-open grasslands are usually quiet, but for many ranchers, fresh tracks around the fence line signal a different kind of problem. At first, wolves were only spotted on distant hillsides or along the edges of pine forests. Over time, however, they began showing up closer and closer to grazing areas. Some young calves disappeared, cattle became more alert, and fresh signs were repeatedly found along familiar trails. What worried ranchers most was that the wolves seemed to have learned how to approach areas used by people, and then quickly slip away before being noticed. For years, ranchers relied on fences, guard dogs, and frequent pasture checks to keep wolves away from their livestock. Those measures sometimes worked, but the packs often changed their routes and returned from another direction. As the incidents continued, wildlife management teams began focusing more closely on wolf behavior. Instead of simply trying to scare them away, they studied where the packs traveled, when they appeared, and what factors caused them to choose one grazing area over another. Motion-activated cameras were placed along fence lines, dry creek beds, and trails connecting the forest to the open pasture. After several days of observation, a clear pattern began to emerge. The wolves rarely moved directly toward the livestock. Instead, they followed low vegetation, stopped to watch from a distance, and then continued moving. Some routes were used again and again, especially low-lying sections of terrain that helped keep them out of sight. Based on the collected data, the team identified a narrow corridor near the creek as the best location to deploy a control system. Every piece of equipment was prepared carefully to minimize changes to the surrounding environment. Disturbed soil was covered again, dry grass was returned as closely as possible to its original position, and team members avoided unnecessary movement around the area. With an animal as observant and scent-sensitive as a wolf, even an unfamiliar smell or a fresh track could cause it to change routes. Remote cameras allowed the team to keep watching the area without constantly returning to the site. The goal was to hold the animal under controlled conditions, so it could later be handled safely.
He'll stay right there.
Over the next several days, the wolves appeared around the area repeatedly, but kept their distance. At one point, a wolf moved closer, inspected the ground, and quickly turned back. camera footage showed that the pack often sent one or two animals ahead, while the others remained farther away and watched. That level of caution is exactly what makes wolves so difficult to manage. They remember the terrain, notice subtle changes in their surroundings, and adjust their movements based on what they have encountered before. One morning, an adult wolf finally entered the narrow trail near the creek. It stopped several times, scanned the area, and then continued forward. As it crossed the selected location, the system was triggered and held the animal in place. The management team quickly reached the site, assessed the wolf's condition, and brought specialized transport equipment closer. Every step was carried out slowly and under controlled conditions to minimize stress on the animal. It was then placed in a transport crate and moved away from the grazing area according to the management plan prepared in advance. What happened in Wyoming shows that protecting livestock is not simply a matter of building fences or relying on traditional deterrence. When people understand how wildlife moves, reacts, and adapts to its surroundings, they can develop strategies that better fit each location. Wolves still play an important role in the ecosystem, while ranchers also need to protect their livestock and their livelihoods. Creating a safe distance between the two is never easy, but strategies based on observation and behavioral understanding can help reduce conflict in a more sustainable way. If you enjoy stories like this, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel for more.
Here it is. It's insane. So it gave him something.
The presence of coyotes around a farm often goes unnoticed at first. Initially, people may only observe a few subtle changes in the animal's behavior. Poultry may refuse to enter the coop as usual, goats may repeatedly stare toward the fence, and guard dogs may suddenly bark for long periods in the middle of the night. At times, the sheep may huddle tightly together even though there is no obvious sound nearby. By morning, fresh tracks in the soft mud near the grazing area may finally confirm that a predator has entered the property. For the farmer, this is a sign that coyotes may have been watching the farm for several nights. To experienced trackers, every sign can reveal something about the animal's movements and behavior. Coyote tracks are usually narrow, with the toes positioned close together and pointing forward. They are smaller than gray wolf tracks and differ from those of domestic dogs, which tend to wander freely in different directions. Coyotes usually move with steady, evenly spaced steps, leaving a fairly straight trail with few unnecessary turns. They often travel along field edges, drainage ditches, low brush, old fence lines, or rarely used paths to conceal their presence. Before moving deeper into the farm, they may circle the area several times to identify places with the least protection. Coyotes rarely rush toward livestock during their first visit. They may spend several nights observing the farm from a distance, learning when people leave the area, where the guard dogs usually patrol, and where the livestock gather after dark. Their patience allows them to determine which areas are well protected and which weak points can be approached without making noise. As the signs become more frequent, a wildlife management team is called in to inspect the property. They examine the fences, study the tracks, evaluate possible access routes, and install cameras near water sources, brush, and other suspicious openings. After several nights of monitoring, the footage shows that the coyotes usually appear when the farm is at its quietest and leave before sunrise. Some remain at a distance and simply observe, while others follow the fence line or stop near familiar trails. Using the collected data, the specialists begin identifying the most frequently used routes and selecting suitable locations for traps. The equipment is deployed according to wildlife management procedures designed to reduce risks to livestock and non-target animals. Every step is carried out carefully to preserve the surrounding landscape. The soil is returned to its original position, dry leaves and grass are spread back over the ground, and signs of human activity are kept to a minimum. With their highly sensitive sense of smell, even an unfamiliar scent or a displaced branch can cause coyotes to change direction immediately. Over the following nights, the cameras continue to record the animals returning, although they do not approach the area right away. Some stop for several minutes to observe, while others circle the location before heading back toward the field. The specialists avoid rushing the process because any unusual activity could cause the entire group to change its route and stay away from the area for weeks. After several days of waiting, an alert near the trapping area indicates unusual movement early one morning. When the wildlife management team arrives to inspect the site, they find that several coyotes have been caught along their familiar travel routes. The goal of the operation is not to completely remove coyotes from the area, but to reduce the threat to livestock and prevent further conflict. When one route becomes dangerous, the remaining animals may quickly switch to another path, change their feeding schedule, or move into a neighboring area. For this reason, trapping alone cannot provide a long-term solution. After the control operation, the farmer must still reinforce the fences, remove leftover food, move livestock into secure enclosures before dark, and continue using surveillance cameras.
And for good reason. When a coyote attacked their chihuahua named Chico, that air horn may have saved the little dog's life.
The story begins with a brief news report that catches the whole neighborhood's attention. A coyote attacked a dog in a yard, leaving many residents worried. They had assumed coyotes stayed in distant hills and fields, but the animals have adapted to many U.S. cities and suburbs. When they find food scraps, chicken coops, or rodents near homes, they remember the location and return. For small dogs or outdoor cats, even a brief lack of supervision can create an opportunity for a predator.
So they don't just come over and let you put the collar
A
on.
meeting is held in a barn between two farms. Residents describe when they saw coyotes, some near dawn, others jumping fences at night. Wildlife officers explain that coyotes may hunt by day or night, depending on quiet conditions and available
So we
food.
ended up having Parks and Wildlife come in, but those are animals that can't really be reconditioned through hazing.
As natural predators, they usually target rodents, rabbits, and other small animals, but small dogs, cats, and poultry can also become prey in residential areas. They thrive in suburbs because food, irrigation water, and shelter are easy to find. During breeding season or while raising pups, their food needs and territorial behavior increase. After reviewing tracks and camera footage, the group agrees on two methods. Padded foothold traps will be used along field routes, while live cage traps will be placed near homes to reduce risk. Food scraps and outdoor water bowls must also be removed. An infrared camera later records a coyote moving along the tree line at 2 a.m. It repeatedly crosses a narrow strip of ground before disappearing near a ditch. After watching for several nights to confirm the route, the team places a padded foothold trap at an approved location away from pets. On the first night, the animal stops and watches. On the second, it turns away again. Near dawn on the third day, the coyote is finally held by one front leg but remains standing. Despite trying to damage the trap, it cannot escape, while the others only watch from a distance. The next morning, the team finds the expected result, an adult coyote. Sometimes, however, other animals such as raccoons or bobcats are caught by mistake. Depending on local rules, the animal may be managed, treated if injured, or handled in another approved way rather than simply released far from the neighborhood. On the other side of the neighborhood, another coyote often appears near homes with small dogs and cats. Because the area is close to people, the team chooses a live cage trap. It is placed in a quiet corner of a yard, away from walkways, and monitored by camera. All other food sources are removed. During the first 2 nights, the coyote circles the cage, sniffs the entrance, and leaves. On the third night, it enters halfway but hesitates. The following night, it moves farther inside, the door closes behind it, and an alert is sent immediately. During inspection, the animal is alert and shows no sign of injury. After a closer check, it is transported according to Wildlife Agency procedures. There are no gunshots, no chase through the neighborhood, and no pets are placed at risk. Capturing a coyote does not mean every danger is gone. If food, water, and shelter remain easy to find, another animal may take its place. Traps solve only the immediate problem. Strong fences, clean yards, supervised pets, and cooperation with wildlife professionals provide lasting protection. The efforts of American residents to keep coyotes out of neighborhoods cannot be denied. Yet once the traps are removed, one question remains. How can they be prevented from returning? Some suggest bows or guns, but such measures may not be necessary. Although coyotes can threaten pets, they also help control rodents and other small animals in nature. Share your opinion in the comments.
During the first few days, the livestock farm remained peaceful. The animals were taken to pasture each morning. The fences were intact, and no one noticed danger. However, that sense of security was soon disrupted by unexplained changes. A few animals strayed from the herd and disappeared. Poultry numbers declined, and long trails of tracks appeared near the forest edge. Within a few nights, the tracks became more frequent, suggesting predators were quietly moving closer. Wildlife management teams quickly arrived to investigate. Based on the size and direction of the tracks, they determined these were not left by a single animal passing through. Travel routes appeared along the creek bank, through brush, and across connected game trails. The wolf pack seemed to have been watching for days, testing routes and learning which locations received little attention. They avoided open ground and approached livestock from directions difficult to monitor. To determine the pack size and timing, specialists installed cameras around the grazing area. The devices were placed along narrow trails, near a dry creek bed, and in open spaces between forest sections. After several nights, the wolves' behavior became clearer. They were not wandering aimlessly, but following familiar routes. At times, the pack traveled closely together, while individual wolves sometimes split off to scout. Their changing schedules made their movements difficult to predict. The data showed the situation could not be resolved through a single action. Wolves are highly observant, quick to react, and especially alert to unfamiliar scents or signs. If they detect a new device, disturbed ground, or unusual activity, they may immediately abandon the route. For this reason, the control plan was divided into several stages. The teams continued monitoring their movements and identifying wolves that frequently approached the farm before selecting an appropriate strategy. In certain areas, licensed and experienced hunters use bows and arrows. This method does not depend on chasing the animals, but requires patience, careful observation, and a strong understanding of wolf behavior.
Then another.
Trackers must read footprints, determine the wind direction, and choose concealed position. They observe from a distance, make little noise, and wait for the animal to move within range. A single careless movement can cause a wolf to change direction and disappear. Even so, this method rarely produces quick results. Wolves often leave shelter in low-light conditions, move through heavy cover, and seldom remain still for long. On many occasions, cameras recorded them for only a few seconds before they vanished. By the time the control team arrived, all that remained were fresh tracks. The pursuit became a prolonged battle of wits, with the pack constantly changing its schedule to maintain an advantage. When monitoring and direct hunting failed to produce results, specialists added trapping to plan. Instead of placing traps randomly, they used camera footage and fresh tracks to identify locations the wolves visited most often. Foothold traps and cage traps were the two main types used. Each served a different purpose, but both had to be deployed by trained professionals, operated according to regulations, and inspected regularly. Even a minor mistake could cause the entire pack to alter its behavior. Foothold traps were usually placed along narrow trails where wolves had passed repeatedly. Cage traps could capture, assess, or relocate an animal according to established procedures. However, choosing the correct location was only the beginning. Wolves have a sensitive sense of smell and easily detect changes. If soil is disturbed, vegetation moved, or an unfamiliar scent appears, they may stop and take another route. Specialists therefore leave little trace while adjusting their strategy. Ultimately, managing a wolf pack depends on more than cameras, bows, or traps. It is a process of gathering information, analyzing behavior, and adapting to an intelligent species. Every footprint, every frame of footage, and every change in the pack's direction helps people understand the wolves more clearly. In the wilderness, the advantage usually belongs to whoever remains patient, observes carefully, and correctly anticipates the opponent's next move. Share your thoughts and stay tuned for more stories.
At first, everything on the farm continued as usual. The livestock kept grazing in the pasture, the fences showed no signs of intrusion, and the distant woods remained quiet whenever night fell. However, before long, unusual signs began to appear with increasing frequency. Several young animals repeatedly strayed from the herd, while the guard dogs often faced the woods and barked for long periods in the middle of the night. In the soft mud near the creek, a series of unfamiliar tracks formed a clear trail, suggesting that a predator had approached the area more than once. Those tracks eventually revealed the presence of a wolf pack. Wolves do not need the overwhelming strength of a bear or the explosive speed of a big cat to be effective predators. Their greatest advantage lies in the close coordination among members of the pack. Some wolves move ahead to scout, others remain farther behind, while the adults continuously watch for changes in their surroundings. Through effective communication and careful use of the terrain, they can approach a target while leaving behind almost no obvious signs of their presence. Once the pack's movement patterns became clear, wildlife specialists began selecting suitable locations for the control operation. Instead of placing equipment throughout the entire area, they focused on points the wolves were almost certain to pass through. These were usually narrow game trails, openings between two large thickets, or strips of ground between a rocky slope and the creek. At these locations, foothold traps were carefully concealed beneath the soil, and the surface was then restored until it looked exactly as it had before. Every layer of dry leaves, grass, and topsoil was returned to its original position, so that no sign of disturbance remained visible. Human scent was also kept to an absolute minimum because wolves can detect even the slightest environmental change with their highly developed sense of smell. A fresh footprint or a single displaced branch can cause them to stop and inspect an area for a long time. The moment they detect an unfamiliar scent or notice an object that does not belong, the entire pack may immediately leave and completely change its route. For that reason, success depends less on the number of devices being used and more on understanding the wolves' habits and reactions. Wolves rarely rush into an area where something has recently changed. They may stop at a distance, watch for an extended period, test the air, and examine the ground several times before moving forward. Because of this, every new track, each camera sighting, and every subtle change in their direction becomes valuable information. After several weeks of patient monitoring, an adult wolf finally appeared along its familiar route. It slowly emerged from the edge of the woods, followed the creek, and moved toward the location that had been prepared in advance. The wolf stopped several times to survey its surroundings, but everything still looked natural, and it noticed nothing unusual. When the animal stepped into the exact spot that had been selected, the trap mechanism was triggered. The entire event unfolded within seconds, and the management team quickly arrived to carry out the necessary procedures. However, controlling one animal did not mean the entire problem had been solved, because the remaining wolves often respond quickly to any change within the pack. Within a short time, the cameras showed that the pack had shifted to different routes, began appearing later at night, and kept a greater distance from the farm. In response to that adaptation, the specialists were forced to keep adjusting their strategy, relocating cameras, and strengthening protection around the livestock areas. The battle of wits between humans and wolves is never determined by traps or equipment alone. It is a long-term process that requires patience, careful observation, and a deep understanding of how wolves move, react, and adapt to their environment.
A coyote warning tonight. Animals killed near local home.
When Zane opened the coop early that morning, the familiar sound of the chickens seemed quieter than usual. Before him was a door with a broken latch, dozens of motionless birds, feathers scattered across the ground, and several frightened chickens running wildly. The same scene appeared at many other farms in the area until total losses exceeded $800,000. No one saw these as isolated incidents anymore. The wolves had turned peaceful nights into a constant nightmare. The question was no longer whether they would return, but whether the farmers could stop them before the next night. As the need for action became urgent, the farmers began with familiar measures. They reinforced coop doors, installed alarms along the wolves' usual routes, and even moved the chickens elsewhere. For the first few nights, the birds remained safe, leading many to believe the threat had passed. Yet the wolves were only observing. They avoided illuminated areas, changed their arrival times, and approached from behind the farms. The fences that once seemed secure gradually revealed their weaknesses. A tense battle of wits had begun. When these measures could no longer keep the wolves away, the residents considered a more active step, placing traps along the routes the animals regularly used. The decision immediately sparked debate. Some farm owners believed it was the fastest way to protect their livestock and prevent further losses. Others feared the wolves could be injured or placed in danger after being trapped. The struggle was no longer happening only across the fields, but also within the choices people had to make. Instead of rushing into action, the specialists spent several days studying the wolf habits. Only after carefully identifying their routes and active hours did they begin installing the traps. Each trap was treated to remove metallic odors and human scent, then buried beneath a thin layer of soil. The anchors were firmly secured, while bait was positioned according to wind, so its scent would drift toward the wolves' usual path. They knew their target was highly cautious, and one small mistake could make days of preparation useless. At night, a wolf quietly emerged from the forest edge and followed a trail toward the farm. Near a low bush, while trying to reach the livestock, it lowered its head to sniff and noticed something unusual in the soil ahead. After circling several times, the wolf carefully stepped aside, but was still caught in the trap. The next morning, the trackers found a cunning animal, which appeared surprisingly calm. Hoping for another success, Zane placed a second trap at the same location. As expected, another wolf followed the old route, seemingly unaware that his companion had already been captured. The moment its paw touched the trigger, the trap closed. The frightened animal struggled in the grass. Soon afterward, the inspection team arrived, kept a safe distance, carefully restrained it, and removed it from the farm. After several weeks of patient observation and adjustment, the residents' efforts finally began to show results. Wolf tracks around the coops became less frequent. Repeated intrusions declined, and the losses gradually came under control. However, no one believed the problem was completely over. As environments change, wild animals quickly adapt. For that reason, every protective measure must continue to evolve. Peace is returned, but the conflict between people and wildlife still has no perfect solution. A forceful response may produce quick results, while a gentler approach requires more time, expense, and patience. Faced with this decision, which option would you choose? Share your perspective, because what happened here is becoming a common concern for farms across the United States.
It began with tracks appearing after a snowy night. They stretched from the stream, curved around the mountainside, then vanished at the forest edge. The farmers knew the wolf pack had returned but could not predict where it would appear next. Wolves remember old routes and rarely wander without direction, usually following paths used for generations along streams, mountain passes, and forest edges. The control team quickly surveyed the terrain and placed cameras at narrow points the wolves had to cross. However, they were not easily fooled. A strange scent or human trace could expose and ruin the plan. Therefore, using suitable traps became necessary. When a new route was found, the team returned to set traps. Foothold traps were placed along narrow passages between rocky slopes, while cage traps were prepared for safe capture. Everything seemed ready, but the first night brought only a herd of deer. On the second night, the cameras recorded 2 foxes fighting. By morning, new tracks were found in other directions. The wolves had noticed the change and switched routes. It proved that equipment was only part of the solution. Understanding their reactions determined success. As the old routes became ineffective, the team understood why the farmers were increasingly worried. Years ago, wolf howls were heard only occasionally from the mountains. Recently, however, some livestock had begun disappearing, while the remaining animals often panicked and crowded together. Cameras around the grazing area showed that the wolves never approached randomly. Some watched from a distance while others quietly moved along the forest edge. This coordination made predicting their route and stopping them far more difficult. After reviewing how the pack moved around the pasture, a veteran hunter suggested switching to a bow ambush. Only experienced hunters could handle the task because they needed a deep understanding of wolf behavior and habits. This also prevented unnecessary chases. Wolves often appeared in weak light, moved quickly, changed direction constantly, and rarely stayed still for long. Once, a camera captured only a gray shadow before it disappeared. The hunt was therefore more like a prolonged battle of judgment than a direct confrontation. The hunting team knew that one strange scent or disturbed branch could make the pack abandon its familiar path. They chose a downwind position near the main corridor and covered the hiding place with dry branches. After several patient attempts, the leading wolf finally appeared. It stepped from the trees, slowly sniffed the area, then stopped to observe. The hunter remained still until the animal entered the planned opening. When the moment became clear, he drew the bow and released the arrow. Only after confirming that no other wolves remained nearby did he approach to check the animal's condition. The management team understood that every captured wolf would make the others more cautious. Yet declining natural food sources still drove them toward farms at night. Residents reinforced fences, brought livestock into enclosed areas earlier, and added electric fencing for greater safety. Meanwhile, the team continued inspecting and adjusting the entire trap system. After many nights of monitoring, another wolf was captured along the main corridor. From then on, reports of wolves near the farms fell noticeably. As tracks around the farms became less frequent, residents felt safer when night arrived. Still, no one believed the problem had completely ended, because the pack remained somewhere within the vast forests. The greatest change was how people viewed the situation. Learning to understand, prevent, and adapt became the most sustainable way to protect livelihoods while preserving the natural balance.
What makes wolves a nightmare for many farms is not only their speed or razor-sharp fangs, but also the way they appear silently before people even realize they are there. For several nights in a row, a pack of wolves crept in from the edge of the forest. They memorized the location of the animal pens and observed every movement around the farm. It was only when several chickens disappeared, leaving behind scattered feathers, that everyone understood the farm had become a target. From that moment on, the confrontation was no longer simply about protecting livestock, but had turned into a prolonged battle of wits between humans and one of nature's most cunning predators. Instead of rushing to set traps, the wildlife management team chose to monitor the wolves for several days. Infrared cameras were installed along forest trails, beside fences, and in areas where fresh tracks were frequently discovered. Every recording was reviewed several times to determine when the wolves appeared, which direction they approached from, and how close they came to the livestock area. Night after night, a clearer picture gradually emerged. The wolves were not moving randomly. They repeatedly followed familiar routes, using darkness and the surrounding terrain to avoid human attention. Once their movement patterns had been identified, the trapping operation began. Every location was selected based on camera footage and signs found in the field. The people setting the traps wore gloves, minimized their scent, and carefully concealed each trap beneath layers of soil dry leaves, and decaying grass. Afterward, all footprints were erased, and every disturbed branch was returned to its original position. Even the smallest unusual detail could make a wolf suspicious and cause it to change course, so careful preparation became the deciding factor in the entire operation. The following days remained tense. Cameras repeatedly captured wolves approaching the trapping area, slowly sniffing the ground before becoming alert. Sensing that something was different, they refused to move any closer and quietly turned away. Some returned during the following nights, but they kept a safe distance and watched from afar. Rather than immediately changing the plan, the residents continued monitoring the cameras, recording the time of each appearance, the direction of travel, and the trails the wolves used most often. After several days, the residents realized that the wolves were exceptionally cautious and appeared to have detected the unusual changes around the area. Instead of continuing to wait at the original location, they quietly changed their approach and installed additional traps along the trails the wolves regularly used. Every step was carried out carefully to leave as little evidence as possible. After many nights of patient observation, the long-awaited moment finally arrived. A wolf entered the new location and triggered the trap. When the residents returned the following morning, they understood that the result had not come from luck, but from persistent observation, careful behavioral analysis, and constant tactical adjustment. Even so, the confrontation was far from over. The remaining wolves quickly changed their approach. They stopped using the old routes and began following the forest edge, moving through dense brush and approaching the fence from more concealed angles. In response, the residents installed additional cameras, reinforced the livestock enclosures, repaired openings, and repositioned traps according to the latest signs. The struggle between the people and the wolf pack was no longer a short-term operation, but an ongoing process in which both sides continued adapting in an effort to gain the advantage. The threat had not truly disappeared. Infrared cameras showed wolves silently approaching the livestock pens before suddenly charging toward the panicked chickens. They repeatedly drove the birds into narrow corners, attacked in rapid succession, and disappeared with their prey. The footage revealed how even a small opening could carry serious consequences for farmers. For that reason, the conflict with wolves does not end after a single successful trapping attempt. It requires constant monitoring, stronger enclosures, and continuously changing strategies, because these predators are always watching, remembering, and searching for another way to return.